Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar news update video. This one we have the reveal of the Avatar The Last Airbender Imbalance Part 3 cover and also description. So yeah, here we have it here, September 10th, 2019. That fits very much in line with the schedule we had going from Imbalance Part 1 to Part 2. Obviously it's still not too far on from the release of Imbalance Part 1. And we of course know that Imbalance Part 2 is coming out May 14th, 2019, that's a Tuesday. And it's basically 4 months on from the release date of the first part. And then we move 4 months on from May, and we're obviously into September. And September 10th is also a Tuesday. So they're keeping that in line, that Tuesday, the digital release first, is the way they're going with these books, which is good. Also, I think notable, I think this is a new name in terms of art on the comic. I think I had a brief search and I think she's a colorist. So that's just something interesting to note. But yeah, as for the cover, it's a nice cover in that I really do like Peter Wortman's art. I think it just feels a little similar to kind of like all of them. All of the Imbalance covers just feel a little similar in that it's just the characters with some buildings around them, and then it happens that, like, in part 1 it's just the buildings normal, it's kind of happy. In part 2 it's like some minor kind of problems, and then here the city is burning. Like, there's a certain progress to it, but at the same time, like, it's still just the characters, and that's kind of often been a problem with some of the comics. Only I think a couple of the series have had a really, I think, notable covers in like a part 3. The Promise Part 3 actually has a really good third cover, but, you know, not much to say there. Suki's not in the cover, so I don't know if that says anything about her involvement in the book, if she really makes an appearance or not. That we'll have to wait and see. That could be there for, like, spoiler reasons. But if she does play a big role in Imbalance Part 2 and 3, why isn't she on the cover for at least one of them? That's a bit confusing. But anyway, we have the description as well. The description says, Team Avatar faces their most dangerous foe yet, as the Bender versus non-Bender conflict turns into an all-out war in this action-packed conclusion to the Imbalance arc. While Aang grapples with a life-changing decision that only he can make as the Avatar, Toph and Katara implore him from opposite sides to choose a path. Meanwhile, Ru and Ya Ling concoct a fiery ploy to get their mother back. The Bender versus non-Bender conflict finally reaches a powerful boiling point, and for better or for worse, Cranefish Town will never be the same. So, this is very interesting. Like, the first paragraph there, their most dangerous foe yet, in that, like, are they talking about a specific person there, or just the fact that their most dangerous, like, challenge is the fact that they have a Bender versus non-Bender war basically happening? Because obviously the second paragraph seems to, you know, spoil in a way part 2, that Ru and Ya Ling's mother is captured or put in prison or something like that. Something happens to her in part 2 that leads to them needing to find some way to get her out. So they're not directly talking about her. So who is it in the aftermath of all of this that they're talking about there as a foe? It feels a little bit weird to kind of word like a war as their foe. So I assume it has to be talking about some character, but who is it? And especially with the idea of like their most dangerous foe yet, that's like more powerful than Ozai, more dangerous than Ozai, more dangerous than Azula, you know, Long Feng, these type of villains. Obviously they're trying to hype up the book, but it doesn't really fit for me, at least right now. The second paragraph is very interesting. Life-changing decision only Aang can make as the Avatar, and then Toph and Katara implore him from opposite sides to choose a path. So this is interesting. Aang's placed with a decision that he has to make about, you know, Cranefish Town, and his decision will make a huge difference. Toph is arguing on one side, Katara is arguing from another, and Aang seems to be kind of somewhere in the middle. This isn't really set up for the most part in part 1, because Toph, as much as like they present the idea that Toph doesn't seem to care that like Benders are losing their jobs and she's all for machines, that's like a direct continuation of her attitude towards things in the Rift. We still have to wait to see how she reacts to the whole idea of like Aang's proposal of a police force and how he's maybe going to handle things, like now that there's a conflict at the end of part 1. So what position is Toph really going to take up here? What is the decision about? And, you know, what would cause Toph and Katara to be on opposite sides of an issue? Toph, like, I don't know, is it that she's going to call for, like, Aang to, like, go Avatar state and maybe really heavily capture people? Or would she be arguing the opposite because, like, this town is, like, so heavily related to her father? And then, you know, Katara, I get the impression that whatever argument she's trying to make would be to help the people, and I can't see them going against that because it's so important to her character. So, like, how do you do this, whatever the decision is, and not have, like, maybe Katara always be the one that people side with here and actually make it a complicated decision? Obviously, the whole Avatar position, you know, is kind of somewhere in the middle, but we'll have to wait and see on this. It's definitely one of those ones where this will probably mean a lot more to us once part 2 comes out. As it is, like, okay, it spoils one part of it, but how on earth do we get to the point where, like, what seems to be the main villain from part 1 is captured and there's a war going on? So we obviously have to see the fallout from the end of part 1 and so on, but that's where we're at. So yeah, and then just, I suppose, a quick roundup of, like, what's going on with some of the other books. Team Avatar Tales still hasn't got an updated date. This is the official Dark Horse website. They said a while back that the book isn't, like, scheduled for 2020 or 2021, like some places seem to have it, but that they haven't set a date for it yet, and it still seems like they don't have one, because I think March 6th is a Wednesday still, so this is not going to be what the release date is for this book, if it's going to be in line with the other books. So that will have to change. But we're in February now. Like, there's only, what, 5 weeks basically left until this date passes. And to me, like, if they let it get to the point where it's March 6th and this book is still listed on their website as being March 6th, we've got a kind of problem. We've got a pretty big problem, given that this is the book that realistically should have the least amount of delays, yet it's had the most. So they badly need to fix that. They need to communicate about what's going on with this book. Why is a book that is half reprint and, like, all of the work for the rest of the other half is being done by so many creative teams that even if 1 or 2 have, like, problems, they're only writing, like, 4 or 5, maybe 7-page stories. Maybe there's one story that's maybe longer. So what's going on with Team Avatar Tales? Because I'm really excited for the book, but, you know, the more time goes on, the more we ask what's going on. This book was meant to be out in, like, September or something like that last year. Imbalance Part 2 is May 14th, 2019. That's fine. That is a Tuesday release, so there's no real issue there. Ruins of the Empire Part 1 is released the week afterwards, May 21st, 2019. Will that change or not? I'm not entirely sure. I personally would be fairly shocked if they just left it like that and 2 really big books like that come out a week apart. I get the impression Imbalance Part 2 could get kind of swallowed up by the core book releasing the week afterwards, so I can see them creating a little bit of space between them, but it's still far enough away where there's time for them to change the date without it being a problem. And then the other more recent book is Legend of Korra Turf Wars Library Edition. This is actually the most recent book coming out, unless the only change to Team Avatar Tales is that it gets, like, bumped either, like, a day back, so that it's releasing, like, March, like, 5th, or it's releasing March, you know, 12th. This is going to be the first book that's released. So this is just a collected edition of Turf Wars, March 13th. This doesn't have a digital release, so I think that's why the date is sticking at the 13th, which is a Wednesday, because this is a book basically, you know, made for comic book stores to sell. Now, I don't know what way they're specifically going to do it. Will Amazon and so on still release it on, like, the 12th? Will they release it on the 13th? Or will it be the usual way we've had it in the past, where they'll release the book like 2 weeks afterwards. We'll have to still wait and see on that. It's a bit confusing at this point. But we'll go back to Runes of the Empire for a second here, because obviously the main news in this video was that we got the Imbalance Part 3 reveal. Given how close Runes of the Empire Part 1 is to Imbalance Part 2, that pretty much means we should be getting the reveal of the cover for Runes of the Empire Part 2 and the description fairly soon. Just because, you know, if they're releasing a week apart and they have somewhat similar kind of art schedules, that means that we should realistically get the solicitations for the next parts fairly close together as well. So, am I going to say it's just going to directly be a week from now? I'm not sure. It could be that, like, since it's a new creative team, they give them like 5 or 6 months between books to do, whereas the Avatar books are like 4 months between them. We'll have to see on that, but it's something to look out for, because we're getting to the point where, yeah, we've known about Part 1 for a while. We probably should be getting the Part 2 stuff sooner rather than later. I checked, it's not there on Penguin Random House, but, you know, keep an eye out, basically. So, yeah. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts are on the Imbalance Part 3 cover and description, and just in general what's going on with the general layout of the comics and all the release dates and so on. What are your thoughts? But, yeah, that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.